Generally speaking, religion is good for the world because it makes us aware of God. More specifically speaking, religion is very bad for the world because it gives us a bad impression of God. So it tells us about God, makes us aware of God, and then gives us a really erroneous impression of what God is and what God is all about. If you're learning Tanya, which is a good idea, the entire Tanya, which was the first written book on Chabad philosophy by the first Chabad Rabbi, he says that he wrote the book in order to explain, to answer what seems to be a mysterious statement in the Torah. The Torah says that it is very natural for a Jew to love God. A Jew loves God naturally. The Rebbe's problem, the Rebbe's question is, if you look at our experience, the reality on the ground, it's not natural. It's not natural to love God. It's natural to love ourselves. And yet the Torah says, so it must be true. We naturally love God. So where could the answer possibly lie? Every Jew naturally loves God. So if that's not happening, if we're not seeing it, the problem can be in one of two places. Every Jew loves God. The problem could be with the Jew. If you don't love God naturally, maybe you're not a Jew. Or the problem can lie with God. If you don't love God naturally, maybe you've got the wrong God. If we think about it, the God of religion is not lovable. Not at all lovable. He may be awesome. He may be frightening, but not lovable. So when the Torah says you naturally love God, the Torah is talking about who God really is. If you were introduced to God, you would naturally love him. But the God you were introduced to, you don't love because he's not lovable. What is our image of God? God created the world, created human beings. He created good and bad, good and evil, gave us freedom of choice, told us to choose the good and avoid the evil. If we choose the good, we go back to heaven. If we choose the evil, we go to hell. What is there to love about this? What are you loving? In fact, if I do mitzvahs and I behave myself and I'm good, I'll go back to heaven, which is where I came from. But if I misbehave, then I go to hell. This is not a good game. Why would I even want to play this game? And what does he gain from this? Religion basically says God doesn't gain anything. He's God. He's perfect. He's complete. He is not going to gain anything. It's all for you because he loves you. It's all about you. If it's all about me, I don't like this game. If you ask people, religious people, does God really care whether I'm good or bad? You get a very strange, confused answer. The general policy is, does God really care whether you're good and bad? No. Why should he care? He's God. But if you're bad, he gets very angry and he punishes you. So he really doesn't care unless you get on his nerves. Then he gets upset and he punishes you. Can you love this God? Nothing to love. Religion says God is perfect, God is infinite, God is all-knowing, all-powerful, almighty. You love it so far? What's to love? He's almighty, I'm not. He's all-powerful, I'm not. He's infinite, I'm not. Well, good for him. What is there to love? To appreciate what is true and real, we have to make an important distinction between relationship and intimacy. Everyone has a relationship with God because he created everyone. He is the creator. If you want an intimate relationship, that's another story. What is the difference between a relationship and an intimate relationship? If I worship God because he's powerful, and he is, and he's infinite, and he's eternal. If I worship him because he is powerful and big and intimidating, what is it exactly that I'm worshiping? Is it him? Or is it power? If I worship something about him, is that the same as worshiping him? Think about it in a marriage. You get married, you choose your spouse based on things that you know about your spouse. He's smart, he's strong, he's handsome, she's kind, she's giving, she's loyal, all sorts of beautiful things. That's how you get married. Once you're married, it's not about any of those things anymore. Now, it's just you. So, if your wife asks you, so what do you love? What do you love me for? What do you love about me? Don't answer. It's a trap. Make like you don't hear. Because whatever you're going to say, it's going to be wrong. Oh, I love you because you're beautiful. That's so shallow. No. I love you for your mind. Really? Why don't you take out a book from the library? No, whatever you say is no good. The only answer you can give is, I just can't live without you. Which makes no sense, but it works. There is this mysterious thing. What is it about the person? I need you in my life. Well, what about me? Nothing about you. I need you in my life. Here's a very drastic and controversial idea about our relationships. We do not, should not, need love from our spouse. You do not need love from your husband. You don't need love from your wife. It's a big mistake. We've been misled, misinformed, brainwashed. You don't need love. In fact, if you do need love, you go back to your mother. You don't need love from your husband or from your wife or from your children. If you need love from your children, you got to see someone professionally. That's not healthy to need love from children. You need your husband's love. You need your wife's love. That's very different. I don't need love from my wife. I need her love. Makes a huge difference. I'm not looking for love because I can get that from anybody. And in fact, if you're looking for love from your spouse and you don't get it, what do? You get it from somebody else. The very sentence, I love you, has got to go. It's a terrible sentence. It's destroying marriages all over this country. I love you. It's a horrible sentence. Because the first and most important word is I. The second most important word is love. And the last and least most important word is you. And that's true. Because I love you means I got to be me. I'm me. There's no choice in that. Love, I got to have love. I got to have love. If not from you, then from somebody else. So I love you is a threat. I love you so far. But I'm going to be me and I'm going to have love. And not from you, then from somebody else. You know this routine. The guy says, how come a bride at a wedding wears a special gown? No one else at the wedding is dressed like her. But the groom, all the men are wearing the same tuxedo. They all rented at the same place. Why is that? He says, I figured it out when I heard the vow. Do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? This man. They don't mention a name. So that if she says no, there's another guy in the same tuxedo. He steps in, and the priest says, do you take this man to be your... No? Okay. But that's what it means when you say, I love you. I love you, not you. Okay, next. Because I'm going to love somebody. If you really want to express something real, you should say, you I love. Put the you first. And what does that mean? I don't want love, I want you. I have to love you to get you. Fine, I love you. Whatever it takes, I have to have you. You want love from your child, you're immature. If you want your child's love, you're a good parent. Why do you want your child's love? Because you need to be loved? Well, then if your children don't love you, there are other children down the street. They'll love you. No deal. You don't want love. You want your child. Well, if you're my child, then everything about you becomes important to me. But because of you, not because of love. So if I'm looking for love, I shouldn't get married. It's not fair. If you're already in love with someone, don't marry him. Not a good plan. If you're looking for love and you found love, leave it that way. Don't get married. If you're looking for a person, if you want her or him, then get married. And if you're married, well, then his love becomes important. Her love becomes important. So love is not a generic thing where if I don't get it from you, I can get it from somebody else. When God creates the world, He's creating the opportunity or the possibility for a relationship. And He creates people who will either love Him or hate Him. Because that's what real love is about. You love someone who could love you back or could hate you back. That's real. And either way, you want that person. God wants us. What about us? Nothing about you. He wants you. And because He wants you and because you are significant to Him, that's why every mood, every thought, every act, every word you say becomes important to Him. Not because those things are important, only because they're coming from you and you are important. If I'm inspired by His power and His greatness, I'm worshiping something about Him. I'm not reciprocating. He doesn't worship anything about us. There's nothing to worship. We're finite, we're tiny, we're puny, we're fickle, we're weak. There are no things about us that He could possibly want. It's just us. And because He wants us, our thoughts become important, our words become important, our actions become important. If I worship love, then I'm not worshiping God. Those who worship God because He is love, they're not worshiping Him. They're worshiping something about Him. Now, if you worship something about God, it's not exactly idolatry. I mean, after all, it is Him. But from the Jewish people, God can't tolerate it. In a marriage, if you worship something about your spouse, it feels totally wrong. It's upsetting, it's disturbing, it's painful. If you're not married and you worship somebody's intelligence or somebody's character or somebody's sense of humor, that's fine. It's a compliment. But not if you're married. In an intimate relationship, there is nothing. There's just the person. And then, because of the person, everything becomes significant. We worship God correctly as Jews, not because he's powerful. Doesn't inspire. The Grand Canyon is awesome. Don't worship the Grand Canyon. We don't worship God because he's love, because sometimes he's not. We're not worshiping love. We're worshiping him. How do we do that? How do we get to the him beyond all the things about him? There's only one way. Respond to his need. How do you connect to your spouse, to your children, to your best friend? You respond to their need. If they don't have needs, you can't have a relationship. So you can be respectful, you can be in awe, you can be obedient, you don't have a relationship. Because if he doesn't need, then you can't get to him. He is not available. I got a phone call a few years ago. This guy on the line says, I don't want to tell you my name. I live in Oregon, in a town where there are practically no Jews. He's Jewish. He's a retired psychiatrist. And for the last 36 years, he's been practicing Christianity. But now, in his older years, he says, I feel a need to be connected to my people. What can I do to be connected to my people? I said, you get a pair of tefillin, you put them on every morning, you'll feel connected to your people. He says, I can't do that, because every time I try to do something Jewish, I've had a bad experience. So impatiently, because this guy is sounding a little weird, impatiently I said to him, look, nobody's Jewish because it's been a good experience. If you do what God needs from Jews, you feel like a Jew. If you do what God needs from non-Jews, you feel like a non-Jew. He says, God needs? I'm not familiar with that concept. So now I'm really impatient. Doesn't want to tell me his name. Wants to do something Jewish, can't do something Jewish. It's been a bad experience. Now he's debating theology with me. So I said, look, God is infinite, right? He says, yes. I said, God is infinite in all things and in all ways. He's infinitely forgiving, he's infinitely patient, he's infinitely wise, he's infinitely kind, right? Yeah. I said, well then, he must also be infinitely vulnerable. He says, vulnerable? God is vulnerable? God is almighty. He's a retired psychiatrist, right? So I said, doctor, you're not suggesting that being vulnerable is a weakness, are you? He got very flustered, and he hung up the phone. A few days later, he calls back. Doesn't want to tell me his name. He says, where do I get tefillin? I said, why all of a sudden? He says, well, I can't accept the message of Christianity. I said, after 36 years? He says, you have to understand my background, my professional background. Because of my professional background, I can't accept their message. Because in my profession, we know that if somebody says, I love you very, very much, I love you more than anything in the world, but if you're not interested, I don't care. Doesn't hurt me. I'm just doing you a favor. In my profession, that's not love at all. That's manipulation. That's like saying, love me or else. That's not love. If you're not vulnerable, then you don't love. You can't love. Love without vulnerability is manipulation. Pretty powerful. So the message of Christianity, God loves you very much. He's all about love. He is love. God is. You're not interested? Go to hell forever. That doesn't work. Doesn't work. Don't hear from him I told him where to get tefillin. I don't hear from him for about 2 years. All of a sudden he calls. He says, I don't want to give you my name. He says, I just want to tell you, I moved from this little out-of-the-way place in Oregon to Pico Robertson. I said, whoa, fanatic. They go from one extreme to the other. Pico Robertson, it's the most heavily Jewish populated neighborhood in Los Angeles. Without vulnerability, there is no love. Without vulnerability, there is no intimacy. If God is not vulnerable, if God can't be hurt, if God can't be pained, then there is no relationship. We worship God because He's vulnerable, because He's needy. We're afraid to share this with the world. We're afraid to tell our non-Jewish friends and neighbors that our God is vulnerable because they might lose respect. What kind of God is vulnerable? But if God is not vulnerable, if God is what we think He is, untouchable, invulnerable, unreachable, unflappable, unshakable, then He is also totally irrelevant. So we describe His greatness. We paint Him with these superlatives. He is the most perfect, the most complete, the most... What are you doing? What are you doing? You're making Him irrelevant. You're turning Him into this perfect, flawless, awesome statue. And we mock the idolaters. We make fun of idolatry. What are you worshiping? The idol can't see. It doesn't hear. It doesn't breathe. Right. It's perfect. We mock that. That's an idol. God breathes and He hears and He sees and He feels and He reacts. He's a living God, not a statue. How powerful, how awesome and personal, that's the key word. How personal are the first words in the Torah? In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. What does that tell you? How can we not take that personally? He created heaven and earth. Why? Why? Because He wants you. Because without you, He is not complete or happy. In Kabbalah it says that the 6 days of creation are actually the expression of 6 emotions. Each emotion has its own day. That's why there are 6 days. The first day, God created kindness, love. The second day, God created judgment, fear. On the third day, God created compassion. Here's the problem. If God created love on the first day, what motivated creation? You see the dilemma? We assume God created the world out of love. But according to Kabbalah, love is one of his creations. So what motivated him? There is this awesomely romantic and personal message here. God created the world because he wants you. You need love. Fine, I'll create some love. You need compassion. I'll create compassion. Why? To have you. That's what a marriage is. A marriage is not, I love you so much, marry me. Marriage means marry me. And if you need love, I'll create love. I'll invent it. I'll steal it. I'll get some in order to have you. You need compassion? I'll get it. I'll make it. I'll invent it. I'll produce it. If that's what you need, I'll have it. But I need you.
Partner with Rabbi Friedman. Visit itsgoodtoknow.org/support.